The water is at my ankles now. Cold. Rising. I'm standing in my own living room, watching 40 years of photographs float past like dead fish. The locks on every door have been changed from the outside. My phone has no signal. And somewhere upstairs, I can hear her humming. That was 6 hours ago, or maybe 7. Time moves differently when you're watching your life dissolve. My name is Ruth Eastman, and until 3 months ago, I thought I understood the shape of my world. 64 years old, recently retired from teaching high school biology, living alone in the Denver suburbs since my husband Paul died 5 years back. 2 daughters who live on opposite coasts. 4 grandchildren I see twice a year. A reverse mortgage that keeps me comfortable. Normal, stable, dry land. The first sign came in July. A letter from something called Tidewaters Estate Management, addressed to my late husband. I almost threw it away. Junk mail still arrives for Paul, as if death is just a forwarding address companies haven't updated. But the envelope felt heavy, expensive. Inside was a single paragraph on letterhead, so thick it could have been carved. Dear Mr. Eastman, per the terms of your agreement dated March 15, 2019, the secondary beneficiary clause activates upon 5 years from primary signatory departure. Please be advised that property transfer proceedings will commence September 1st unless contested within 30 days of this notice. Regards, Monsieur Tidewaters, Executive Director. I read it 4 times. Each reading made less sense. Paul had been meticulous about our finances, showed me every document, explained every decision. We'd refinanced the house together in 2018, done our wills together. There was no agreement from March 2017. He was already in hospice by then, barely conscious most days. I called the phone number on the letterhead. It rang once, then a woman's voice, smooth as oil. You've reached Tidewaters. We're currently reviewing your file. Someone will be in touch. The line went dead. I tried calling back immediately. Number disconnected. That night, I went through Paul's filing cabinet again. Everything exactly as I remembered. Mortgage papers, insurance policies, tax returns in chronological order. Nothing from 2019, except medical bills and funeral arrangements. But wedged behind the hanging folders, so far back I had to remove the entire drawer to reach it, was a manila folder I'd never seen. Inside, a single document. Property Interest Transfer Agreement. Paul's signature at the bottom, notarized, dated March 15, 2019, the day he entered hospice. According to this paper, Paul had signed over contingent rights to our house to someone named Marina Tidewaters in exchange for considerations previously rendered. My hands shook. Paul had been on morphine by March, could barely hold a pen. The signature looked like his, but wavery, uncertain. And who was Marina Tidewaters? I called my daughter Jessica in Seattle. She's a paralegal, practical, suspicious of everything since her own divorce. Mom, that's fraud. Obviously. Dad couldn't consent to anything in March 2019. But it's notarized. So, notaries can be bought. Send me a photo of the document. I did. She called back an hour later. Voice different. Careful. Mom, this is sophisticated. The language is perfect. Legal but vague enough to mean almost anything. Contingent rights could be partial ownership, could be nothing. Considerations previously rendered could be a debt, could be a gift. Who is this Marina person? I have no idea. I'm flying out tomorrow. But Jessica didn't make it out the next day. Or the next. First her flight was canceled. Then her car broke down on the way to the airport. Then her son got sick. Not seriously. but enough to keep her home. Every day something new, each excuse reasonable, but the pattern felt wrong, like something was keeping her away. Meanwhile, things started happening at the house. Small things. My mailbox key stopped working. The post office said the lock had been changed at the owner's request. I hadn't requested anything. The sprinkler system turned on at 3 a.m., flooding the basement with 2 inches of water. The garage door started opening and closing randomly until I disconnected it entirely. Then I met Mrs. Chen from 3 houses down, walking her ancient poodle. "Ruth, dear, I didn't know you were selling." "I'm not selling." "Oh, the woman who was here yesterday said—" "Never mind. I must have misunderstood." "What woman?" "Tall, dark hair, very professional. She was taking photographs of your house, measuring the fence line. I asked if you were moving, and she said, 'Soon.' I filed a police report." Officer Martinez took notes politely, but explained that taking photos from the sidewalk wasn't illegal. Neither was measuring a fence from public property. Without threats or trespassing, there was nothing to investigate. That night I installed security cameras, cheap ones from Amazon, but they connected to my phone. For 3 nights, nothing. On the 4th night, at exactly 3:33 a.m., all 4 cameras went dark simultaneously. When I checked the recordings, the last frame from each showed the same thing: a woman's silhouette, face obscured, holding up a piece of paper to the camera. When I zoomed in, I could just make out the words, "Stop interfering with my property." Her property, my house, the house Paul and I bought in 1987, where we raised our daughters, where he died in our bedroom because he wanted to be home at the end. Her property. I called a locksmith the next morning, had every lock changed, installed a deadbolt on the bedroom door, started sleeping with Paul's old baseball bat beside the bed. Jessica kept trying to fly out, kept hitting mysterious obstacles. My other daughter, Amy, in Florida, didn't believe any of it was real. "Mom, you're stressed. Maybe you should talk to someone." Then the water started. Not flooding. Seeping. First in the basement, which I attributed to the sprinkler incident, but it didn't dry out. Instead, it spread. Dark patches on the concrete that looked like water, but felt cold, almost frozen. The smell came next, salt and decay, like low tide at a polluted beach. I had 3 different plumbers check the pipes. Nothing wrong. Had the foundation inspected, solid as stone. The seeping accelerated after I hired a lawyer. Patricia Corwin, recommended by Jessica, specialized in property fraud and elder abuse. She reviewed the documents, made phone calls, did title searches. What she found changed everything. "Ruth, there's another deed on file. Filed just last week. According to county records, you sold the house to Tidewater's estate management on August 15th. That's impossible. I didn't sell anything. Your signature is on the deed, notarized, witnessed. The sale price is listed as $1 and other valuable considerations. I've never seen this document." "I believe you, but legally, it exists. And here's the strange part. The notary who signed off on both this deed and Paul's 2019 document. She died in 2020, so she couldn't have notarized something last week." "Exactly. But her stamp, her signature, they're authentic. I've compared them to other documents. Either someone has her actual stamp, or this is the best forgery I've ever seen." Patricia filed an emergency injunction to stop any property transfer. The court date was set for September 3rd. Meanwhile, she advised me to document everything. Never be alone in the house if possible, and consider staying somewhere else. But where would I go? Amy didn't have room. Jessica was still mysteriously unable to travel. Hotels were expensive on my fixed income. And more importantly, leaving felt like surrender. This was my house. Paul's house. Our life was in these walls. The water got worse. It rose through the floorboards in the guest room, pooled in the kitchen, despite no visible source. I spent entire days mopping, squeezing out bucket after bucket of salt water that shouldn't exist. The smell intensified rotting kelp, dead crabs, the organic stench of ocean death. Then I found the first note. It was tucked under my windshield wiper, the paper damp, edges curled. The tide comes in whether you want it or not. I started keeping a journal, documenting everything. August 20th. Water now constantly present in 4 rooms. August 22nd. Neighbor reported seeing woman in my backyard at midnight. August 24th. Received call from my bank. Someone had tried to wire my entire savings to an offshore account. Transfer blocked only because I'd set up 2-factor authentication. August 26th. Found all my family photos from the living room floating in the basement, though I'd never moved them from their shelves. Patricia called with more disturbing news. Marina Tidewaters doesn't exist, not as a real person. It's a legal entity, like a corporation, but registered in Delaware, where ownership can be hidden. The only name attached is an attorney in Wilmington who won't return my calls. So who is doing this? That's what we need to find out. Ruth, has Paul ever been to Delaware? Any connection there? Never. We've barely left Colorado since we moved here. What about before? Where did Paul grow up? Massachusetts, little town called Tidewaters. The silence on the phone stretched like a held breath. Ruth, the town was called Tidewaters? Yes, but it doesn't exist anymore. Got destroyed in a hurricane in 1954. Paul's family lost everything, moved inland. He never wanted to talk about it. I need you to think. Did Paul have any family who survived? Anyone who might have a claim on him? His parents died in the 80s. He had a sister, but she drowned when they were children. In Tidewaters. During the hurricane. You're sure she died? That's what Paul always said. Margaret, she was 12. Patricia's typing was audible through the phone. Then, Ruth, I'm looking at census records. Margaret Eastman, born 1942, Tidewaters, Massachusetts. No death certificate on file. That's impossible. Lots of records were lost in the hurricane. But I found something else. A Margaret Eastman married someone named Robert Waters in Boston 1965. Margaret Waters filed for divorce in 1972, citing abandonment. Her ex-husband, Robert Waters, legally changed his last name to Tidewaters in 1990. Why would someone name themselves after a destroyed town? I don't know. But Marina Tidewaters, the entity trying to take your house? It was formed in 1990, same year as the name change. My throat felt full of salt water. You think Paul's sister is alive? And married to someone who's trying to steal my house? I think we need to find out. Can you go through Paul's things again? Look for anything about his childhood, his family, especially his sister? That night, I emptied every drawer, every box, every closet. In a shoebox of Paul's mother's things, wrapped in plastic, was a water-damaged diary. The entries were from 1954, the year of the hurricane. Most pages were illegible, ink washed away. But one entry survived. September 3rd. Paul won't admit what he did. Says Margaret fell off the boat by accident. But I saw him push her. My own son, a murderer at 10 years old. We're leaving tomorrow, before anyone finds the body. Starting over inland. Paul needs help, but who would believe a mother accusing her own child? Better to say she drowned in the storm. Better to bury the truth with the town. I sat on my bedroom floor, surrounded by the debris of our life together, holding proof that my husband had murdered his sister when he was 10 years old. The man I'd slept beside for 38 years, who raised our daughters, who held my hand while he died. The water in the house rose another inch that night. Patricia filed the diary as evidence, though its relevance to the property dispute was unclear. But 3 days later, she called with urgency in her voice. "Margaret Eastman survived. I found her." Margaret Eastman Waters Tidewaters. She'd kept adding names like Armour lived in a care facility in Boston. 81 years old, suffering from dementia, but alive. Patricia had confirmed it through medical records, Social Security, even a recent photograph. A woman with Paul's eyes, Paul's sharp nose, Paul's thin mouth set in an expression of permanent grievance. "She can't have orchestrated this," Patricia said. "She doesn't even know what year it is most days. But someone has power of attorney over her affairs. Robert Tidewaters, the ex-husband who named himself after a dead town." "No. Robert died in 2015. The power of attorney belongs to their daughter. Marina Tidewaters is a real person after all. Margaret's daughter, Paul's niece. Paul told me his whole family was dead. Paul told you a lot of things that weren't true. I flew to Boston that night, using credit cards since my bank accounts were frozen, pending investigation of the attempted wire transfer. The care facility was pristine, expensive, the kind of place that costs $15,000 a month. At the reception desk, I said I was there to see my sister-in-law. "Margaret doesn't receive visitors," the receptionist said. "Family orders. I am family. Her brother's widow. Her brother is dead. Has been since 1954. No, Paul died 5 years ago. In Colorado. I have his death certificate." The receptionist looked confused, typed something into her computer. "I'll need to call Ms. Tidewaters for permission." "Marina? You know her?" "We've never met, but she's trying to steal my house." The receptionist's expression shifted to alarm. Her hand moved toward what was probably a panic button. I left before security could arrive, but I didn't leave Boston. Instead, I found the address Patricia had dug up for Marina Tidewaters. A brownstone in Back Bay, the kind that cost millions. I sat across the street in a rental car, watching. At 6 p.m., a woman emerged. Tall, dark hair, maybe 45. She looked like Paul, moved like Paul, that same deliberate stride. She got into a Tesla with Colorado plates. My phone rang. "Jessica. Mom, someone's at your house. Mrs. Chen called me. She has my number from when Dad was sick. There's a moving truck. Call the police." I did. They said the new owner has every right to begin moving in. I'm the owner. Not according to the paperwork they showed the cops. I drove straight to the airport, but Marina had taken the last direct flight to Denver. I caught a red-eye through Chicago, landed at dawn, took an Uber straight home. Or what had been home. The moving truck was gone, but changes were everywhere. New locks again, a no trespassing sign. And through the windows, I could see furniture not mine, different, all blues and grays like ocean colors. My furniture was piled on the lawn, getting soaked by the sprinklers that now seemed permanently on. I called Patricia from the sidewalk. "They can't do this. I have an injunction." The injunction was overturned. Late yesterday, emergency hearing. A judge ruled that with 2 notarized documents showing transfer of ownership, plus Paul's original agreement from 2019. You have to prove fraud, not them. The burden of proof is on you. But Margaret has dementia. She can't consent to anything. Marina has power of attorney. She's acting on Margaret's behalf, claiming Paul stole property that belonged to his sister. The house in Colorado is supposedly compensation for the family home in Massachusetts. That's insane. Tidewaters was destroyed by a hurricane. But the land wasn't. It still exists, underwater at high tide, but legally still property. Marina claims Paul stole documents proving Margaret's inheritance of that land. Sold it illegally in the 60s. Used the money to start his life in Colorado. Even if that's true, how does that give her rights to our house? She has a document, supposedly signed by Paul in 1965, promising that if Margaret ever found out about the land sale, he'd compensate her with equivalent property. Paul was 23 in 1965. We hadn't even met. Doesn't matter if it holds up in court. What matters is she has enough documentation to make this a very long, very expensive legal battle. Ruth, she's trying to exhaust you, break you, make you give up. But I couldn't give up. That house was all I had left of Paul, not Paul the potential murderer, Paul the attempted fratricide, but Paul who sang in the shower and cried at our daughter's weddings and held my hand through chemotherapy, even though I was the one who survived. I rented a motel room with my last functioning credit card. That night, I searched online for everything I could find about Tidewaters, Massachusetts. The hurricane of 1954 had indeed destroyed it, killed 43 people. The land was never rebuilt on, considered cursed. But in 1963, it had been sold to a developer who planned to build a seawall, reclaim the land. The seller, Paul Eastman, claiming inheritance from his deceased parents and sister. The developer went bankrupt before building anything. The land sat empty, legally in limbo for decades. Now it belonged to the state, worthless, a patch of sand and ruins visible only at low tide. But Marina had documents suggesting the 1963 sale was illegal, that Paul had forged his sister's death certificate, sold land that was partially hers. Patricia estimated proving or disproving this would take years and hundreds of thousands in legal fees. She doesn't want the land, Patricia said. She wants revenge for her mother, who spent 60 years thinking her brother tried to kill her, then stole her inheritance. Did he? Tried to kill her? Does it matter now? It mattered. Everything mattered when you're sleeping in a motel while a stranger lives in your house. I withdrew the last of my cash $700 and drove back to Boston. Margaret might have dementia, but there were moments of clarity in most patients. I needed to hear it from her. The care facility wouldn't let me in, but money talks. A night shift orderly, named Clarence, accepted $300 to let me in through a service entrance at 2 a.m. Margaret's room was on the 3rd floor, overlooking the harbor. She was awake, sitting by the window, watching the water. Margaret. She turned. In profile, she was Paul's ghost, same bones, same way of holding her head. You're early. The tide isn't high yet. I'm Ruth, Paul's wife. Her expression shifted, sharpened. For a moment, absolute clarity. Paul's dead. Yes, 5 years ago. Good. She turned back to the window. He held me under. Did you know that? Not pushed, held. I could see his face through the water, watching me drown. But you survived. Mr. Chen saved me. Fisherman. Pulled me out a mile from shore. I was dead for 3 minutes, he said. When I came back, my parents had already left. Assumed I'd drowned. Taken Paul and run inland. She laughed, a sound like grinding shells. They chose him, the one who tried to kill me. Why did he do it? I saw him kill our cat, held it underwater in the rain barrel. I was going to tell. So he took me out on the boat during the storm surge, held me under. She looked at me again. You loved him? Yes. I'm sorry. Your daughter is taking my house. Margaret's face went vague again, the moment of clarity dissolving. The tide comes in, can't stop it. Everything goes back to the sea eventually. Tell Marina to stop, please. Marina? She smiled. Marina isn't mine. Robert's daughter from his first marriage. But she calls me mother. Only person who ever believed me about Paul. Not Paul's niece. No blood relation at all. Just the stepdaughter of a woman Paul had tried to murder, carrying out revenge for a crime 70 years old. I left through the service door as the sun rose, drove straight to Patricia's office. She was already there, surrounded by law books and coffee cups. Marina Tidewaters isn't Paul's niece. No biological connection at all. Doesn't matter. She has power of attorney over Margaret, and Margaret has a legitimate claim. Or at least legitimate enough to tie this up in court for years. So I lose everything because my husband was a child psychopath? You lose everything because Marina is better at paperwork than we are. Look. Patricia showed me a stack of documents. She's been planning this for years, setting up the legal entities, creating the paper trail, waiting for the 5-year mark after Paul's death, when certain inheritance laws would shift in her favor. Why 5 years? Colorado law. After 5 years, certain types of claims against an estate become harder to dispute. She knew exactly what she was doing. My phone buzzed. An email from Marina Tidewaters herself. Ruth, I know you visited Margaret. Security cameras caught you. That's harassment of a vulnerable adult. I could press charges, but I'd rather offer you a deal. Sign over the house cleanly, no court battle, and I'll give you $50,000 to relocate. Enough for a fresh start. Fighting this will cost you 3 times that in legal fees, and you'll lose anyway. You have 24 hours to decide. $50,000. For a house worth $400,000. For 40 years of memories. For the place Paul died, where my daughters grew up, where I'd planned to die myself someday. I wrote back, I'll see you in court. Her response was immediate. Your choice, but you should know, I've already won. Check your mail. Patricia drove me to the house. I couldn't call it mine anymore, though I refused to call it hers. The mailbox that I no longer had a key to contained a thick envelope. Inside, photos of Paul as a child, standing over a rain barrel, a dead cat floating in the water. Another of Paul on a boat, his sister nowhere visible, and dozens of pages of what looked like Paul's handwriting journal entries, confessions, detailed descriptions of harming animals, planning to hurt his sister. These could be fake, Patricia said, or they could be real. The handwriting looked exactly like Paul's. The photos were definitely him. I recognized the sharp chin, the cold eyes I'd sometimes glimpsed when he thought I wasn't looking. Even if they're real, they don't give Marina legal claim to your house. But they destroy Paul's reputation. Our daughters would see these. The grandchildren. Everyone would know. That's the point. She's not just after the house. She wants to destroy Paul's memory. That night in the motel, I dreamed of water, rising through the floor, cold and salty, carrying kelp and small dead fish. In the dream, Paul stood in the corner, 10 years old, holding a drowned cat. The tide always comes back, he said. I tried to tell you. The court hearing was a massacre. Marina's lawyer, a sharp woman from Denver's most expensive firm, presented document after document. Paul's 2019 agreement, the new deed, the 1965 promissory note, psychiatric evaluations suggesting Paul had manipulated Margaret into signing away her inheritance rights while she was still traumatized from near drowning. Our evidence of forgery looked thin in comparison. The dead notary could have pre-signed documents. The sudden appearance of papers could have been recently discovered. The judge, Honorable Patricia Winters, seemed sympathetic but bound by law. Mrs. Eastman, while I understand your distress, the documentation provided by Ms. Tidewaters appears legitimate. Unless you can prove definitively that these documents are forged, I have to rule based on what's presented. Your Honor, Patricia interjected, we're asking for more time to investigate. The timing of these documents. The timing is unfortunate, but not illegal. However, I'll grant a 30-day stay. If you can't provide concrete evidence of fraud by then, the property transfers to Tidewater's estate management. 30 days to prove something I couldn't prove because maybe it wasn't forgery. Maybe Paul really had signed those documents. Maybe he really had been the monster Margaret claimed. Outside the courthouse, Marina approached me. Up close, she was beautiful in a cold way, like polished stone. Ruth, you seem like a nice woman. You didn't know what Paul was. I knew who he was for 38 years. You knew who he pretended to be. But Margaret remembers. Every night she drowns again in her dreams. She sees his face through the water. Do you know what that does to a person? To survive that, then be told you're dead, your family gone, your entire existence erased. She had a life, married, had you. Stepmother. Robert was my father. But Margaret loved me like her own, told me everything. How Paul took everything from her, her family, her inheritance, her identity. She spent decades trying to prove she was alive, that she had rights to the family property. No one believed her. So you're avenging her? I'm giving her justice, the house for the land, his legacy for hers. I had nothing to do with what happened in 1954. Marina's smile was sharp as winter. Neither did I, but here we are, cleaning up the aftermath. That night, I couldn't afford another motel night. I slept in my car outside the house I'd lived in for 37 years. At 3 a.m. the lights came on inside. I could see Marina moving through rooms, touching walls, rearranging furniture, making it hers. Patricia called at dawn. I found something. Not enough to win, but maybe enough to negotiate. Marina's been taking money from Margaret's accounts. Lots of it. Elder financial abuse is a felony. But she has power of attorney, which doesn't give her the right to buy herself a Tesla and pay for a brownstone in Boston with Margaret's money. I've got bank records. If we report this, she could face criminal charges. Do it. Ruth, if we report her, she might retaliate. Those photos of Paul, the journal entries, she could release them publicly. Let her. My daughters deserve to know who their father really was. But I was wrong. Jessica called that afternoon sobbing. Marina had sent her everything. The photos, the journals, a detailed letter explaining how her grandfather had tried to murder a child, stolen inheritance, built his entire life on lies. Mom, is this true? I don't know. Maybe. Probably. How could you not know? How could I? He never told me about Margaret being alive. Never mentioned Tidewaters. People can hide anything if they try hard enough. My whole childhood was a lie. No. Your childhood was real. Your father loved you, whatever he did before. Monsters don't love Mom. They just pretend." She hung up. Amy called an hour later, equally devastated, but more angry than hurt. "I'm changing my name," she said. "I won't be an Eastman anymore." "Sweetheart, did you know? Any of it?" "No. I don't believe you. 38 years and you never suspected? Never wondered why he had no family? No history? People reinvent themselves all the time. Not like this. Not built on attempted murder." Patricia filed the elder abuse complaint. Marina was arrested 2 days later, released on bail immediately. Her lawyer claimed all expenditures were for Margaret's benefit. The legal battle expanded, twisted, became something neither side could control. Then Margaret died. The call came at 4 a.m. Margaret had walked out of the care facility somehow, made it to the harbor, walked into the water. By the time they found her, she'd been dead for hours. No signs of foul play. Just an 81-year-old woman with dementia who'd spent her life haunted by drowning, finally letting the water take her. Marina called me an hour later, crying. Real tears or performance, I couldn't tell. "She's gone. The only person who ever loved me. I'm sorry for your loss. Are you? Or are you relieved? Without Margaret, my claim is weaker. Without Margaret, none of this matters. She was the victim, not you. I'm her heir. Her suffering passes to me. Suffering isn't inherited. You're choosing this. Like, you chose to marry a monster? I married a man I loved. Whatever he was before, he became someone else. No one becomes someone else. They just get better at hiding." The funeral was in Boston. I went, though Patricia advised against it. The service was small. Marina, me, a few staff from the care facility. Marina had dressed Margaret in blue, the color of deep water. The coffin was closed. After the service, Marina handed me an envelope. From Margaret. She wrote it the day she died. Inside, shaky handwriting on water-stained paper. "Ruth. He held me under, but I forgave him. Children do terrible things, but he never said sorry. Never acknowledged I existed. That's what killed me, over and over. Not the drowning, the erasing. Tell Marina to let it go. The tide takes everything eventually. No point fighting it." "She wanted me to stop," Marina said. "But I can't. I've spent everything on this. The lawyers, the documents, the research. If I stop now, I have nothing. You have nothing anyway. Margaret's gone. The person you were avenging is dead. But Paul's crime remains. Paul's dead too. Everyone's dead except us. And we're destroying ourselves over ghosts." Marina looked at the harbor, where Margaret had walked into the water. "I bought your house with the last of her money. Every penny she had saved. I can't afford to keep it. Then sell it. To you? I can't afford it either. The legal fees have bankrupted me." We stood there, two women ruined by a crime committed before Marina was born, when I was 2 years old. The weight of it was absurd. All that destruction over a boy pushing his sister off a boat in 1954. "I have a proposal," Marina said. "We sell the house, split the proceeds. Each take half and walk away." "That's all? After everything? What else is there? Margaret's dead. Paul's dead. The house is just walls and memories. The money might help us both start over. And the documents? The photos? I'll destroy them if you want. Or keep them. Proof that Paul was exactly who Margaret said he was." I thought about my daughters, the grandchildren I might never see again. The life I'd built on a foundation of lies. Keep them. Truth matters, even when it hurts. The house sold in 3 weeks. Quick cash sale to a developer who'd tear it down, build 2 smaller houses on the lot. $360,000. Marina took her half and disappeared back to Boston. Maybe, or somewhere else where she could pretend she'd gotten justice. I took my $180,000 and bought a small condo in Arizona. Desert. No water for miles. My daughters don't visit. Jessica sends Christmas cards with no return address. Amy changed her last name to her husband's. The grandchildren don't know I exist. Sometimes I dream of Paul, but he's 10 years old, standing in water that rises and rises. I had to, he says. She would have told. Told what? That I wasn't who I pretended to be. But none of us are who we pretend to be. We're all hiding something beneath the surface, hoping the tide doesn't expose it. Paul hid attempted murder. Marina hid her greed behind revenge. I hid my willingness to ignore Paul's lack of history, his cold moments, his empty spaces where family should have been. The water always wins. It seeps through foundations, rises through floorboards, carries away everything we thought was solid. The sea came to me not as literal ocean, but as truth slow, inexorable, dissolving 40 years of carefully constructed life. My last conversation with Marina was yesterday. She called from Margaret's empty room in the care facility, packing the few belongings. I found more journals, she said. Margaret's from the 1960s. She writes about seeing Paul once, in 1973. He was with you. She wanted to approach, but was afraid. Where? A beach in Massachusetts. You were on your honeymoon. I remembered that day. Paul had gone rigid, said he felt sick, insisted we leave immediately. I'd thought it was food poisoning. She followed his life after that, Marina continued. Newspaper clippings about his business, your daughter's birth announcements, everything. She wasn't angry, just wanted to exist in his world somehow, even from outside. That's heartbreaking. That's family. Messy, horrible, inescapable family. She paused. I'm sorry about your house, Ruth. I got so focused on justice, I forgot about mercy. We all did. The water damage. In the house, that was me. Salt water in the walls, the pipes. I wanted you to feel like you were drowning too. It worked. I know. I'm drowning too. She hung up. I haven't heard from her since. The condo in Arizona is nice, quiet, dry. I volunteer at the library, have coffee with neighbors who don't know my history. It's a life, just not the one I planned. Sometimes I forget I was married for 38 years to a man who might have been a monster. Sometimes I forget I had daughters who loved me before they knew the truth. But then I smell salt in the desert air, impossible but there. And I remember, the sea comes to everyone eventually. Not as water, but as the past breaking through, the truth seeping in, the tide of consequences that no amount of sandbagging can stop. Paul pushed his sister off a boat in 1954. She survived, but the ripples of that splash took 70 years to reach shore, to destroy the house we built, to drown the family we made. That's how the sea works. Patient, inevitable, carrying messages in bottles that arrive decades too late to save anyone but just in time to destroy everything. My name is Ruth Eastman. I dreamed of living by the sea, and in the end, the sea came to me. It took everything, my home, my family, my faith in the life I'd lived. But I'm still here, in the desert, as far from water as I can get, waiting for the next tide to find me. Because it will. It always does. If you stayed until the end, thank you. Sometimes the only comfort is knowing someone witnessed the drowning.